Before we get into today's video, I know because Vanguard Zombies is getting a lot of hate right now that a lot of you probably don't want to spend money on the game, but thankfully, I am going to be giving away not just one, not just three, but 5 copies of Call of Duty Vanguard for any platform, thanks to the sponsor of this video, Mobile Premier League. So yeah, 5 copies will be given to some of you, but before jumping into the simple requirements to enter this free giveaway, let me tell you about Mobile Premier League, because I think a lot of you will love this app and it is available on Android and iOS devices. MPL features many multiplayer mobile games that reward skilled players with cash. Yes, real money. For example, I was able to win $20 by winning matches on bowling, and because you can quickly receive your winnings on PayPal, I can already use it to buy Call of Duty points or anything else I desire. Just like that. MPL has several battles you can join for free on the app as well. Now that you know this, all you have to do is download the app and make an account to have a chance of winning one of 5 free Vanguard copies. Nice and simply, to download MPL on Android, you have to visit mpl.us and tap the big download app button and install the app on the phone. On iOS devices, all you have to do is download MPL on the App Store, and there will be links down in this video's description so that you are able to download it. After downloading it, make sure to create an account and you will be automatically entered into the giveaway. Hello guys, this is the Gaming Revolution here, and let's get the elephant out of the room and discuss the disastrous Vanguard Zombies launch. I honestly don't know how I'm going to structure this video. I think it's going to be kind of rambly because a lot of other zombies YouTubers and I are in this really weird predicament where I think a lot of us are just kind of stunned and we don't really know what to do right now. I think a lot of us were not expecting much content on a launch for Vanguard Zombies, but we didn't expect it to be this severe. Never in a million years did I ever think we would get this little content for a Zombies launch, and I don't really know exactly how we got here. So Vanguard Zombies has simply launched with Der Anfang, which is not a round-based map, it's a newer mode which is kind of like a round-based and Outbreak hybrid, but honestly the gameplay flow plays nothing like Outbreak. It plays more similar to round-based, but just with forced objectives, because you spawn in Stalingrad, the main central hub, and there's the Pack-a-Punch here that doesn't require you to open anything up, it's just there from the get-go in the spawn. You then have the Altar of Covenants and the crafting table. There are a few different portals at the start of the game which take you to different blocked off locations in Stalingrad, as well as Shi No Numa, Hotel Royale in Paris, and Normandy in France, which is a section from the campaign. Upon completing these objectives, this is how you progress the rounds. We have a Blitz, which is essentially just the holdout objective from Outbreak, where you just have to survive within an enclosed area for a certain amount of time. We have Transmit, where you have to escort a floating zombie head as it seeks weaknesses to the dimensional barrier in the Dark Aether, just like the orb from Onslaught. We then have Harvest, where you have to kill zombies and some of them will drop runestones that you are able to collect and deposit into an obelisk called the Sin Eater. And once you've deposited 15 into 3 different Sin Eaters, that will complete that one. And yeah, that's all of the objectives. There's literally just 3 objectives in this mode, which is very limited. After you complete each objective, you then spawn back into Stalingrad and the map will gradually start to open up, allowing you access to new areas where the perk machines are. The perk machines have a new system in this game where they are all free from the get-go, and you can upgrade each of them 4 times, but the cost to upgrade them increases every single time. 2,500 essence for the second tier, 5,000 for tier 3, and 7,500 for tier 4. Each of the upgrades for the perks simply increase the base statistic, which is very different to Cold War Zombies, where they had a different upgrade perk system where you could upgrade them with the crystal tiers, which were permanent upgrades, which personally I prefer this system a lot. It gave you something to grind, and also the perks were just a lot more interesting because the different upgrades would actually give you new abilities, such as abilities from prior perks in prior games. For example, Elemental Pop had the ability to have an electric shock when you would reload like Electric Cherry, whereas all of the perks in this game are just boring, to be honest. They just increase the base statistic. So for example, with Stamina Up, every time you increase the tier, you'll just run a bit faster, and you are quite fast by the end, but wouldn't it be so much cooler if there were some other secret abilities to the tier upgrades? But not just that, the perks in the game itself are quite disappointing. We have just 5 standard perks, which are Juggernog, Stamina Up, Speed Cola, Quick Revive, and Deadshot, but all of the perks perks have been renamed in the game, and some of them have also been given new perk icons. For example, Deadshot now has a mouth with sharp teeth. And yeah, we saw this in the trailer, and a lot of us were assuming there was new perks coming to Vanguard Zombies, but then we played the game and found out there's actually no new perks. So I think a lot of people in the community are feeling quite bamboozled right now, because it feels like we were manipulated. We were expecting new perks, and really they were just icon changes, and I don't understand why the icons were even changed. It's just such a pointless change, especially because they kept the stamina up icon the same, and the speed cola icon is similar. It's slightly different, but it's pretty much the same. So why would they change the other icons? It just made us think there were new perks coming, and we got excited to see some different perks, and then they never ended up coming. And what's also disappointing is, as I said, we just have 5 standard perks, which means a bunch of the perks that were introduced into Black Ops Cold War Zombies are now gone. We don't get to use them. We just had PhD Slider added to the game, for example, which is really fun in Cold War, but if you come over to Vanguard, you now can't use it. There's no elemental pop either that was on launch for Vanguard Zombies. They've just removed a lot of stuff, which is just really frustrating, and I think that's the theme of Vanguard Zombies. It's a stripped back version of Cold War Zombies. They have removed an absolute ton of features. Right now, what exactly is your incentive to play Vanguard Zombies? Cold War Zombies is the far superior game, especially because it's had a full DLC season, we've had a bunch of maps, but even comparing Vanguard Zombies to Cold War Zombies, both at their launch, is Vanguard Zombies is obviously way inferior. And the thing is, we were complaining about Cold War Zombies having a lack of content at launch. It launched with Die Maschine, as well as Dead Ops and the PlayStation exclusive Onslaught mode that has finally released to Xbox and PC just the other day, a year later. And speaking of a PlayStation exclusive mode, this year there is no exclusive for Vanguard Zombies players, and a lot of people have been rejoicing at this fact, but overall, I just see this as a net negative for everyone, because overall, we are just getting less content. I would have really liked to see Onslaught in Vanguard Zombies, especially because there are 16 main multiplayer maps in the game. That would be a lot of Onslaught content for us to enjoy, and if you weren't a fan of Dirt and Fang, you could still play that as something extra. It would have been even better if it wasn't PlayStation exclusive as well, and everyone could enjoy it. And then you had the crystal tiers that you could upgrade, which I think gave people something to grind for the first week or two. I think I unlocked them all within like 5 days, but it was just something nice to grind, and there's not really much to grind in Vanguard Zombies unless you want to grind the camos, which in my opinion don't really look great. For some weird reason they have some sort of green tiger Dark Aether camo. It makes no sense considering the Dark Aether is red in this game like hell, and there was a leaked camo before launch of a red Dark Aether camo, and apparently this isn't fake. So it seems like Treyarch for some weird reason changed the red Dark Aether camo to this uglier camo that doesn't even make sense because it's green instead of red, and the red one's just so much better. I just don't understand. And what's more is there is no Pack-a-Punch camo on Dirt and Fang, and Treyarch have said they're going to be adding something similar to a Pack-a-Punch camo in the future, but I don't know what that even means. Maybe this red Dark Aether camo that was leaked is the new camo that's coming, but what exactly do Treyarch mean by saying that there's a camo similar to the Pack-a-Punch camo coming? They didn't say it's actually a Pack-a-Punch camo, they said it's something similar. I have no idea what that means unless they're going to give us a way to actually unlock different Pack-a-Punch camos. Maybe that's what they're on about. Maybe we're going to be able to select different Pack-a-Punch camos that will only be applied to your weapon when you Pack-a-Punch. Maybe there's going to be a whole other camo unlock system specifically for Pack-a-Punch camos, but maybe I'm speculating way too high right now, and maybe that is not coming. And speaking of the Pack-a-Punch, they have also changed the Pack-a-Punch in this game. So as he was saying, it's just in spawn now, which honestly I think really works for this mode. I like having the central hub of Stalingrad. I think it works well, just having all of the upgrade items just all in the central area that you come back to after completing each objective. But they've made the Pack-a-Punch more expensive. It's now 7,500 points for the first tier, 15,000 for the second, and 30,000 for level 3. So Unpack-a-Punch weapons are white rarity, level 1 is blue, level 2 is purple, and level 3 is orange. So they've gotten rid of the weapon tier system in Cold War Zombies, and they've just streamlined it it into the Pack-a-Punch system, which I honestly like. This is one of the few changes that I think is actually an improvement of Cold War Zombies, but I just don't think that it's worth it being as expensive as it is, because even when you get fully level 3 weapons, they seem to just barely do any damage. Like, I just don't understand. At around round 15, the rounds just start getting really hard on Vanguard Zombies, and it just takes a little while to kill the zombies. And this system is good because as you progress the rounds, weapons will then become Pack-a-Punched in the mystery box as well as from the loot crate. So it gives you a reason to spin the mystery box, I guess, on higher rounds, which kind of became redundant in Black Ops Cold War unless you were trying to get the wonder weapon or ray gun. But yeah, it just takes a while to set up in this mode to get all of the upgraded perks and Pack-a-Punch, and it just doesn't feel rewarding because by the time you've gotten fully upgraded, after you've done a few rounds, it just all feels the same. I just don't understand who this mode was made for, because Anfang, they were saying before launch that it's catered well towards casual players for them to easily jump into and enjoy. But from my time playing, this mode seems like it would be atrocious for casual players because you have to complete forced objectives from the get-go. Also, it's not very self-explanatory just going from the portal to then complete the objective and coming back and upgrading your stuff and choosing the right covenants and strategy and stuff like that. It seems like this mode is absolutely not catered towards casuals. But at the same time, this mode is really difficult, so is it catered towards a hardcore audience who has been playing COD Zombies for years? I don't think it's catered to them either, because everyone's dissatisfied with this mode, mainly because of a lack of content, but at the same time I think the mode itself doesn't really cater towards hardcore players. So I just don't really understand who this mode is catering towards, because I don't think it's hitting either spectrum of the community. I think either side is going to be disappointed by this mode, in my opinion. I think that Die Maschine is the perfect example of a map suited for casual players. You can hop in Die Maschine, start killing zombies easily in the spawn straight away, and jump straight into it. The game guides you to turn on power and Pack-a-Punch. You know, it's all just very straightforward, and I think Die Maschine is a much better map for casual fans, and that's a round-based experience. And this is this new mode, which, as I was saying, is some sort of Outbreak and round-based hybrid. But I've seen a lot of people saying, why are Outbreak lovers not liking this mode? And I think it's because the reason why people liked Outbreak isn't because of the forced objectives. Personally, I love Outbreak. It's something I've really enjoyed playing over the year for Cold War Zombies. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I like Outbreak because of the exploration. I like the large maps. I like exploring the different loot crates. I like doing the little side things like fishing. You can go fight Order, you can parachute, you can do loads of cool things, and Outbreak is basically a sandbox mode. You can test out different weapons, you can test out different perk upgrades and tiers, etc. It's just a mode to just have fun with friends, and you have vehicles as well, which provide a lot of different gameplay options for you to just mess about, and I think that is why players liked Outbreak. It was just a fun mode to hop on with friends and just have some mindless fun, where you didn't really have to think too much. Now granted, you could just go for high rounds on Outbreak too, but personally, I would always just exfil after round 10, simply because the games would take a little while and I wouldn't be playing them very fast. I would play a little bit slow. So I've never really even experienced Outbreak high rounds, but it's not why I liked the mode. I do agree that the objectives, the forced objectives, get repetitive on Outbreak, and I'm not a big fan of forced objectives, but I understand that Outbreak was basically a beginner mode for Treyarch. This is their first attempt at an open world zombies mode, so what I'm hoping for in the future of Outbreak is that it could be expanded upon, where instead of having to do forced objectives, there's just loads of different objectives, loads of different quests around the map, and you can complete them at your own pace, instead of having to go to a random objective. Especially because of the fact that we can only play on sections of the Euro Mountains, I'm hoping that in the future of Outbreak, we could potentially play on one massive map, like the entirety of Euro Mountains. I'm hoping that Treyarch expand upon this open world zombies experience into true open world, where we get a massive map to explore. What I'm really hoping for, and I don't know if this is going to happen for Vanguard Zombies, but we're getting the new Caldera map in Warzone, and it looks absolutely beautiful in the Pacific, and I would love to see Outbreak on Caldera. But the thing is, I think if Treyarch do make Outbreak, they need to make it free to play, and it needs to be a part of the Warzone launcher, because I know that a bunch of players will come into the zombies community if that happens. There's a bunch of people that play Warzone that have never bought Modern Warfare, they've never bought Cold War or Vanguard, they just play that free to play experience, and I think that casual audience suits Outbreak really well. Outbreak Outbreak suits a free-to-play DLC model a lot better because over the course of 2021, a bunch of stuff has been added to Outbreak. New side objectives, new main objectives, new Easter eggs, and a bunch of new maps. And all of that stuff getting added to a paid game just doesn't really feel that adequate. They also added things like the grapple, which really changed up the gameplay, but despite Outbreak getting a ton of stuff added throughout the course of the year, and it is much better now than it was at launch, where it was a lot more bare bones, that DLC model just doesn't work for a paid game. It just doesn't. It's just not enough. Every time they would add stuff to Outbreak, I don't really think it would bring that much more life to it. I mean, it brought more enjoyment for me, but I'm just talking about in terms of like player numbers and stuff like that. I don't know how many people were like, oh, this new map got added to Outbreak, oh, this new objective got added, I'm going to play it a lot more now. Whereas I feel like if it was inside of Warzone and free to play, these little updates would be adequate because that's more similar to the updates that Warzone gets. Warzone just gets these little updates and tiny points of interest changes every now and again. It doesn't really get anything crazy. You know, we're finally getting a new map to the game, which is going to be the biggest change it's gotten since launch a couple years ago. But yeah, speaking of Outbreak being a lot better now than it is at launch, a lot of people have been saying, well, you can't really judge Anfang now because it's in its infancy state, and Outbreak was pretty bare bones at launch. But even with Outbreak at launch, it was still a lot more expansive than Anfang, especially because you had these large maps to explore. And yes, a lot of the Euro Mountains maps are too large, I do agree. The pacing in Outbreak is a bit slow. When you would start the game, especially on solo, it would just be very slow paced, and it would take a few rounds for the action to start getting more intense. And I think that's just because of the way that Treyarch designed the zombies to spawn in on the map, where they wouldn't just be roaming around the map all over, because that would just probably break the game. They would spawn in kind of little sections. When you would get close to them, you'd see a group of them spawning in, and then they'd chase after you and more would spawn in around them. And this was just a way for them to get around, you know, engine limitations and stuff like that. And we ended up seeing smaller maps like Collateral get added to Outbreak later on, and I actually think these smaller maps worked better in Outbreak just because of the way that the zombies spawn in. The smaller, more compacted map just worked better. But even with Outbreak on launch, we had a bunch of side quests we could do and maps to explore, and you know, there was just a lot more to it. Whereas Anfang has Stalingrad, and then it only has 3 different objectives, which are very repetitive, especially because they are a lot quicker to complete than the Outbreak objectives. For the most part, on average, they just take a lot shorter to complete, which means you're repeating them a lot more. Now, more, as we were saying, are getting added in the DLC, but it's just not good enough, really. 3 objectives is very little, and you know, these objectives are pretty difficult actually, especially on the higher rounds. You know, Blitz, where you're in a holdout area, often you're in a very enclosed area, which is a lot more difficult to survive in than in Outbreak. I really like Transmit as well. It gets very intense when you're escorting the head, and Blitz is the only new objective we've gotten. We've never seen this objective before. The other 2 objectives, we've seen variants of them in Outbreak already, and I like this one. It does require quite a bit of strategy. But yeah, all in all, the biggest problem with Vanguard Zombies is just a lack of content. There is no main Easter egg in Anfang at all at launch. Treyarch have said that it's going to be releasing sometime after Season 1. We don't know when that is. It could be as late as Season 2 for all we know. At the earliest, it's probably Season 1 Reloaded, which means we're probably not going to see it until early next year in 2022. And by that point, so many players will have just left the franchise. I think that Anfang itself is a fun mode. It is pretty cool. I just don't think it's really finished at all. And there's just not enough to it. There's not even any side Easter eggs or quests or anything. There's literally nothing to do. There is no wonder weapon. There's not even a ray gun. I think this is the first time ever Treyarch have released a map without a wonder weapon, and that really takes away from any fun you can have on this mode. When you're just using these weapons, there's no wonder weapon, there's nothing cool you can have. And because there is no wonder weapon, it means that Anfang has less individuality, because the wonder weapons really make the maps. When you think of Origins, you think of the staffs. When you think of Eisendrache, you think of the bows. When you think of D Machine, you think of the DIE. The wonder weapons make the gameplay unique to other maps that have different wonder weapons. And after you return to Stalingrad, the main hub, zombies will start spawning in. As you progress the rounds, more zombies will start spawning in on Stalingrad, because on the lower rounds, not many spawn in, but they don't spawn in forever. It would be cool if on the higher rounds, zombies would just spawn in Stalingrad forever. I guess you could exploit it for XP and camos, but I don't know. I just feel like maybe this mode should have an alternative way to progress the rounds. So you can either do the objectives, which might be a faster way, but maybe you can also progress the rounds by just surviving like normal in Stalingrad. bad, but maybe the rounds take longer if you play it like a round-based experience as opposed to doing the objectives. So the objectives could be a way to do it faster, but if you want to play traditional zombies, you have an alternative method. Now, this Covenant system was really hyped up before launch by the developers, like it's going to be this crazy new thing, but I feel like it's just not as interesting as they made it out to be. Basically, you get these hearts after you complete the objectives, and you can place it into the Altar of Covenants in Stalingrad, the central hub, when you come back from these maps. And yeah, there's various different upgrades. For example, you can get the different ammo mods, such as Turned or Cryo Freeze, which I don't like. This is terrible. Just let us apply it to the weapon from the Pack-a-Punch machine like before. Why did you have to overcomplicate things? Just have it as it was before. Just do that. Just have the Covenants separate, put the ammo mods back in the Pack-a-Punch machine, and put some new Covenants to replace those ammo mods in the Covenant system. They were acting before launch like there's different builds you can make with the different Covenants, but I don't really think they're that crazy, and there's some that really stand out that are clearly a lot better than the others. For example, Unholy Ground, which allows you to deal more damage when shooting from a stationary point. This is one of the better Covenants. And there's some Covenants that just clearly stand out from the others, and it just kind of makes them crutch. I don't really think there are different builds you can make here. I mean, there are technically, but I really think there are just ones that clearly stand out from the rest. And yeah, I just don't really like this system that much. I think it could be good, but personally, I don't really like RNG things in zombies, and you know, this is an RNG thing, and there's crutch ones that you can get, so yeah, I'm personally not a big fan of this. The next thing is that there's no pause ability in solo, at least if you're playing online. If you're playing offline, there is, but who the hell's playing offline? Then you can't level up or unlock camos. And that's because solo games are running on a server, and you can't server pause in multiplayer games either. Treyarch have said this is going to be coming in the future, but this is a feature we saw in past games. Why isn't it there on launch? It just makes no sense. It just doesn't. And because solo games are played on the server, you will get kicked for inactivity if you just stay stationary. And yeah, I don't know why this is. It is very evident Treyarch were forced to make zombies in this game at very last second. It's so obvious. Honestly, I feel like development literally began like 5 or 6 months ago, and the reason for that is because that's about the time when there was a massive drought in content for Cold War Zombies. So I think that is when Treyarch started working on Vanguard Zombies. I don't think initially Vanguard was going to have a zombies mode. I feel like Sledgehammer Games were like, let's just not have a co-op mode and let's just focus on multiplayer this year. And that is why multiplayer fans are eating good this year. We literally have 16 maps at release and 4 additional ones for Champions Hill, which is the most multiplayer maps we've had on launch for ages, and judging from the community, a lot of people really like these maps. They think they are the best launch maps we've had since Black Ops 2. So what I think happened here is Sledgehammer Games were like, let's just not focus on a co-op mode this year and put all of our attention into the multiplayer, because obviously that's the main thing that people play. But then Activision later on were like, no, we're going to need a co-op mode. Zombies sells. There's a lot of players that just pick up the game for zombies. We need to get those players. So they got Treyarch to make zombies last second this year. That's what I think happened. I don't think Vanguard Zombies was planned initially. I really don't. I just think that Treyarch were forced in last second, and what I'm worried about is that this is going to affect Treyarch's next game, releasing probably in 2023, the sequel to Black Ops Cold War. And Treyarch have set up this sequel absolutely perfectly with the ending of Black Ops Cold War, with the Forsaken being trapped inside of the machine, us finding out that Eddie is the director. He's up to mysterious stuff with Project Janus that we don't know his true intention with just yet, but has a lot of really wealthy donors, some sort of uber rich cult that are assisting with that. Perk is likely going to recover the inversion warheads from the Pacific Ocean and collects the crew, Samantha Gray, Weaver, and Strauss. He might even be collecting different artifacts across the globe, different Dark Aether artifacts that we're learning about in Vanguard Zombies. So yeah, I think that the sequel has a lot of really good storyline set up here, but I'm just so worried that Vanguard Zombies is going to take away development time. That's what I'm really worried about. I honestly just feel like it would be better off them just not having zombies this year. We wait 2 years for zombies to make sure that the next game is a lot better. They would have a full 3-year development cycle for zombies and be able to make it a lot more interesting content, but now they are having to work on Vanguard Zombies, and I just feel like this was just rushed out last second by Activision, and I just really feel bad for Treyarch. At the end of the day, they are getting a ton of flack right now on social media. Literally, Treyarch was trending on Twitter for 2 days because so many people were complaining about this mode. They're getting flamed on Twitter, but I just don't feel like it's their fault. I feel like this is a fault of Activision and the problem with game development, just the intense crunch culture. These people are probably not sleeping, honestly. They're probably just as stressed as we are about this this launch. You know, a lot of people are getting very emotional right now, and I just think as a community we need to calm down. I think that's the thing we need to do. Right now we have people advocating to boycott the game and not buy it, and telling people it's in their best interest to not buy it, but overall I just think this is counterintuitive if you want the game to improve. People say that you need to vote with your wallet, but I just feel like under this capitalist system it just doesn't work. We've seen in the past, for example with Black Ops 4 Zombies, when it was received really poorly at launch and we had the blue screens and stuff like that, Activision seemingly just cut a lot of budget from that game and diverted a lot of resources to other portions of the game. And the reason why I say this is because there were different things that were planned. For example, Grief was mentioned by Jason Blundell as being almost ready. They had mentioned things like factions, which ended up getting reworked later on into the contract system. There's rumored to be this second season pass and the Victus maps potentially coming to the game but getting cut. It's just very obvious that Black Ops 4 Zombies had a bunch of plans, but due to it being poorly received, and this is just a simple case of voting with your wallet just doesn't really work, because all Activision are going to do if they see Zombies is underperforming, instead of taking the risk to divert more resources into the Zombies mode to release more content, what they'll do is simply divert resources from Zombies to other modes that are proven to be successful, like multiplayer and Warzone, that make a lot more money from microtransactions for them. Because why would they take the risk in diverting resources to Zombies when it could end up failing? They could put resources towards Zombies and it's still poorly received, especially because the launch window is the most important time for a game. And the problem is, it doesn't matter what Treyarch released in the future. They could release some insane content in the future, but it's already too late. It's released with barely any content. Even if a bunch is coming in the future, it's just too late. The most players are playing the game at the launch, and a lot of people will have already chosen never to purchase the game now just because of this. So it's already too late. It just really doesn't matter what they do in the future, and that is why I just feel like no matter what they do, it's just going to end up being pointless. And it has me kind of worried, just as we were saying, about the future of Zombies, because it's just unacceptable for the game to release with this little content. I thought that Cold War Zombies released with very little content. I personally like Cold War Zombies more than any other Zombies game, and I get a lot of flack for that, but I think that the gameplay itself is really strong in that game. It just did need, I think, a bit more round-based maps and some other content, but it did have a lot of content in the game. It just wasn't what people liked, like Outbreak and stuff, but I personally enjoyed it, so I had a good time. I think that once Firebase Z and Outbreak released to the game and there was a lot more content, and they added Dead Ups Arcade first person mode, there was a lot more content to the game. But at launch, you know, you just had D Machina basically. You had Dead Ups as well, but it was third person, not as enjoyable as first person, so I didn't really touch it. And you had the crystals system to grind out, but somehow this year it's a million times worse. D Machina launched with an Easter egg. It didn't have an ending cutscene, which I didn't like at the time. I really didn't like, especially because, you know, a lot of people complained about Alpha Omega and Tag the Totem's endings being animated cartoons basically, and then D Machina launched with no ending cutscene. So I kind of freaked out at the time, thinking that all of the future DLCs might not have Easter egg cutscenes. Looking back in hindsight, I think it was an overreaction. I'm not really bothered by it anymore. I don't mind that D Machina never had an ending cutscene, because we ended up seeing cutscenes for the future maps, which I think made up for it. And overall, I think that the storyline is very solid for this year. Speaking of that, I will be posting an entire storyline video of the Dark Aether story in Cold War Zombies leading into Vanguard Zombies, releasing in about a week. It's very detailed, but yeah, right now in terms of Vanguard Zombies content, there's literally no content to make on this game because there's no Easter eggs. There's just nothing to do. I could make strategy videos like best pack-a-punch weapons, best covenants, best way to get high rounds, but I'm just not really enjoying the mode to even make those strategy videos, and I've never really made strategy videos on my channel anyways. It's not really my forte. I'm more interested in the storyline and Easter eggs, and well, there just isn't any Easter eggs in the game. But speaking of the positives in the game, I may make a video just talking about everything that I like, but just very briefly, I think that the atmosphere is very awesome in Dirt Anfang. Stalingrad looks so creepy and eerie. I like how they've changed up the aesthetic with all of these demonic rituals and bones and different sacrifices and stuff around the map. I think it looks really cool. A lot of people have been complaining that they've reused multiplayer maps such as Red Star and Hotel Royale, a section from the campaign Normandy, and they've reused Shi No Numa, but I don't mind this at all. If you didn't know Stalingrad was also a multiplayer map, you wouldn't be able to tell just from playing it. It doesn't really matter that it used to be a multiplayer map. The atmosphere is still cool. I don't mind this at all. This has never been my issue. I don't care about them reusing areas in Zombies. I never have. It's just not really a complaint I have, as long as it's just not a full remake. You know, that does get repetitive if you just have remakes back to back to back all of the time, like what happened in Black Ops 4, but I think if you remake a section from the campaign or multiplayer, it's totally fine because it's going to play completely different in zombies anyway, so it's not going to feel like the level from the campaign or multiplayer, so it really doesn't matter at all if it's reused. It just doesn't. If you've never even played multiplayer or the campaign, you wouldn't even be able to tell that they came from it, and that's why I just don't really think it's valid criticism. I think the main criticism with Vanguard Zombies is the fact that there's just no goddamn content. There's literally nothing in the game to do. It's a massive downgrade from Cold War Zombies. There's no crystal tiers to grind. Now we have to upgrade the perks in the game, which in my opinion are just a bit expensive, and also when you go down, you lose the tiers, which I guess is a bit strategic. I don't mind the perk system that much. It's not my biggest gripe with the mode, but yeah, I honestly prefer the prior perk system, being unable to upgrade them with tiers. I don't mind it that much. The Covenant system is okay, but I don't think it's really what they made it out to be. I think that the Pack-a-Punch is a bit too expensive. They need to drop down the price a bit and also increase the effectiveness of a Pack-a-Punch, because right now it just doesn't do enough damage. It just doesn't. And also, I just don't understand who the hell this mode is made for, because as I was saying, it just isn't catered towards casuals. It isn't catered towards a hardcore audience, and it feels like this mode would do really well in COD Mobile Zombies. It just doesn't really do well for a main zombies game though. And yeah, I don't think this is really good for Outbreak fans either, because I love Outbreak and a lot of other people do too, but yet they don't like Dirt and Fang. So clearly there's an issue here. There's a bit of disconnect. Speaking of the storyline for Dirt and Fang though, I did post a video on all of the radios and intel and runes, which I will leave linked in this video's description. I think the storyline is really solid, and when we get the Easter egg, the storyline will be expanded a bunch. I think this is going to better improve our knowledge of the Dark Aether leading into the sequel to Cold War Zombies, since the old ones are going to be returning in that game most likely. And yeah, once we get the Easter egg, we'll learn a lot more. I think that the game will improve over time, but as I was saying, I just think it's too late. I honestly think the game's already doomed, because everyone's already on the hate bandwagon. A bunch of people have already chosen not to play zombies and not to buy the game for zombies. It's just too late. No matter what they change, it's just too late. It's just missing too much content. We have the field upgrades returning in the form of Covenants, but we only have 4 of them. Literally 4 of them, but there's a bunch in Cold War that just aren't present in this game. So that means over the course of the DLC seasons, the same field upgrades are probably going to get added that we've seen before, and the same perks are probably going to get added. Now, they have said that there will be some new field upgrades too, and probably some new perks, but, you know, as we were saying, it's just not good enough. We don't want to get old content we just saw in the last game repackaged and repurposed in this game again. And this is the problem. Because Treyarch were forced to make this game, I think, very last second, and it's running on a new engine, it's running on the Modern Warfare engine, I think a bunch of dev time was wasted in just getting zombies working on this new engine that's never had zombies before. You know, getting the zombies movement and everything, and also getting all the mechanics to work on this new engine probably took a lot of work, and that's why we don't have simple things like a solo pause at launch. Where is it? It's just not there. It just doesn't make any sense. This mode just shouldn't have released in this state. It should have been delayed. It shouldn't have released. Treyarch should have been open with the community and said, look, we're sorry, it's just not coming at launch, it needs more work. I would have been happier then. It could have released with a bunch of quests, more objectives, it could have released with the main quest, and then we could have waited for the next map. Right now it's just incomplete, and that's just very simple. It's just incomplete. It shouldn't have released in this state, but obviously Activision have to please their shareholders, and if they said that Zombies wasn't going to be there on launch, that would probably affect their shareholders' sales. But at the same time, although there are a big portion of the community that just buy COD for zombies, multiplayer is doing really well this year. I've been looking at community feedback and everything is really positive. It's more positive than I've seen in literally years. This is the most positive launch I've literally seen for multiplayer for a Call of Duty game in forever. So that is crazy, and yeah, congrats to Sledgehammer Games for doing a good job on the multiplayer this year. In terms of zombies though, things aren't going so great with Treyarch, but at the end of the day, Warzone is the big seller, you know, right now, and it's getting the new map soon, so I guess it doesn't really matter, and that's just the problem. Now, another issue with zombies is that there's a bunch of lag, and Treyarch have said they're getting dedicated servers later, but yeah, there's a bunch of lag, even on solo, because you're put in servers. You get a lot of jittering and packet loss, and it's just crazy, man. It's just, this game just shouldn't have released in the state that it did. And speaking of the storyline, the operators now are a lot more talkative and funny than they were in Cold War Zombies. You also have the Dark Aether entities, the old ones, talking to you as you play the game, and yeah, it's just a lot more interactive than Cold War Zombies. I think they've really improved in that regard. It's not as good as having a main crew, but it is a lot better. And even though the storyline is really good, there's no intel system in the game, so when you activate the radios and stuff, they won't then get added into the menu, and the problem is some of the radios are near the objectives, so it's hard to listen to them clearly. Now, as I was saying, I've posted them all on YouTube, so you can listen listen to them clearly, but if you are playing the game, there's no way to listen to them clearly. I think the reason there's no intel system is because weirdos complained about collecting them in Black Ops Cold War, and they just removed the intel system. Again, it doesn't make any sense. This mode feels like a bare bones version of Outbreak. It doesn't really have much replay value because there's not many objectives, there's not really much to do, it's very repetitive. I think it's going to take literally months and months for this game to get into a state where it's polished and a lot better, and by that point it's just going to be too late. It really is just a bare bones version of Outbreak. I don't even think it's really like Outbreak. Apart from it having objectives, everything else is very different. There's no weapon inspect in the game either, there's no ping. So many features from Cold War just gone. Like, how on earth is so much content missing? You are able to exfil once again in Vanguard Zombies like in Cold War Zombies, but in my opinion it's just way more anticlimactic than in Cold War Zombies. The Machine had the best exfil site. It was really intense running down to the pond to be taken away by Raptor 1 on the helicopter. But in Vanguard Zombies it's just way more anticlimactic. You don't even have an animation of exiting the map. The game just pretty much ends. But yeah, this isn't really a big deal. I think Anfang would be greatly benefited by side quests like in Outbreak. Obviously we know a main quest is coming, but they haven't said anything about side quests, so for all we know they're not even coming. There's not even an Easter egg song on the map, unfortunately. We only had 2 original Easter egg songs in Cold War Zombies for D Machine and Firebase Z. Vanguard Zombies isn't that bad. The community does tend to overreact. I understand there isn't much content, don't get me wrong, but if you're not really a content creator, it's not as big of a deal. Obviously, if there's not much content, it's going to hurt people like me and other YouTubers a lot more because we make content on the game, and if there's no content, there's nothing to make videos on, which directly hurts our jobs basically. So it makes more sense for content creators to be annoyed about it, but at the end of the day, Treyarch aren't making games for us. They're making games for just anyone to enjoy. They're not making games to carry our channels. It's not their responsibility. And I think a lot of other YouTubers' hate gets misdirected, where they're annoyed that there's not really much content for them to make videos on, and then they blame all of that on Treyarch when it's not even their responsibility for them to put content in the game just so we are able to make videos on it. That's not their goal with making zombies, it's just for, as I was saying, anyone to enjoy it. So yeah, I feel like Treyarch have just been getting the wrong end of the stick ever since Black Ops 4, and they have been getting unfairly treated. Unfortunately, Black Ops 4 just had a really rough launch, even though it launched with a bunch of content, which is completely the opposite of Vanguard Zombies. It had 4 main maps at launch, but it just seems like ever since Black Ops 4, their reputation has just been getting tarnished, because they got a lot of flack for that game, and then they got a bit of flack in Cold War. For Zombies, it seems like the community was really split. A lot of people loved Cold War Zombies, but a lot of people disliked it. But I think Cold War Zombies was perfect because it streamlined the game to make it more easily accessible for new players and multiplayer and Warzone fans, and that brought a bunch of new players over to the mode. I think with Vanguard Zombies though, a lot of those Warzone players and multiplayer players that did hop on Cold War Zombies aren't really enjoying Vanguard Zombies as much. It does seem like most of the community just doesn't seem to enjoy it that much. I've seen people from the multiplayer and Warzone side of things complaining, I've seen hardcore Zombies fans complaining, I've even seen casual Zombies fans complaining, whereas usually there's a lot more of mixed opinions. I have seen some people enjoying Vanguard Zombies, but it's just a lot smaller than usual. But yeah, I really do feel like Treyarch should have held back Vanguard Zombies until it was in a better state and until there was a lot more content, because at the end of the day, is it worth rushing out the content? And yes, it might please shareholders for Activision, but in the process, it ruins their reputation, because surely their reputation is more valuable long term, because at the end of the day, long term fans are what makes the most money. If you have someone coming back for multiple games, buying microtransactions on multiple games, that's surely more valuable than someone just picking up this game, realizing it isn't good enough, and then never touching the next game because they think it might be the same. Surely that's more valuable, and surely their reputation is something that needs to be upheld and should be of the utmost importance, because Treyarch probably knew that people were going to have this reaction to Vanguard Zombies. They knew they would drop in this mode with not much content. They knew it would get a lot of flack and a lot of hate. I'm sure they were likely anticipating it. You know, they're not stupid. They've been making games for years. They can kind of predict how the community will react to stuff based off of how we've reacted to stuff in the past. And we've never seen this little content in a Zombies launch before. They will have seen that people complained about a lack of content in a Black Ops Cold War Zombies on launch, and now that we're getting literally like 5% of what we got in Cold War Zombies on launch, there's no way they didn't anticipate this, but likely they just had to meet their deadlines. At the end of the day, Treyarch have been working on Cold War Zombies whilst working on Vanguard Zombies and their next Call of Duty game that's likely in 2023, because they are juggling multiple different projects, this is why they likely had very little time to put in work on Vanguard Zombies. This is why I think it only began development in the last 6 months. We only got Forsaken literally a month ago, so Treyarch just released a brand new map for everyone, but people seem to have forgotten that, because now we've moved on straight away to Vanguard Zombies. So even though we got a map a month ago, it kind of becomes redundant, and this is the problem with getting a new game every single year. It resets the game. Even though, yes, we did just get Forsaken, people have already moved on to the next game, and I really do think that would have just been better for Cold War Zombies to continuously get updated for another year. I really do wonder what would have happened if Dirt and Fang dropped inside of Cold War Zombies instead, because personally, it has better mechanics, and I feel like a bunch of development time wouldn't have been wasted just trying to get Zombies working on the new engine. I think that wasted the majority of the time, so it probably would have been easier for them to release it inside of Cold War Zombies. At the same time, Treyarch need to begin using this new engine because it's what they're going to use for their next title in 2023. So this year's Zombies might just be them testing to see what works for their next game. Treyarch's dev team is most likely split up across these multiple different projects, and I can't imagine that Vanguard Zombies' team is that large. A lot of the team, as I was saying, are probably working on the next title. All in all, I think we really need to just calm down and just hope for the best, because I think just getting angry and raging at the developers isn't the way to go when at the end of the day, this is Activision's fault. They probably forced Treyarch to make this game in a very short amount of time, and they've done what they could with their time to the best of their ability, and this was the best thing they could come up with under intense scrutiny. I hope that they can pull it around in the DLC, but as I was saying, unfortunately, the launch is the most important thing, and unfortunately, it's probably already too late for things to swing around. I have no idea what the future DLC is going to be for this game. Everything is looking really unclear right now. The new boss zombie is also so annoying. It's just a generic buff zombie with a machine gun that literally shoots at you. Now, when you have a good weapon on the lower rounds, he's very easy to take out. When you just spray for his head, he kind of gets stunned and doesn't really shoot at you, and you can kind of take him out pretty easily. But a ton of these guys spawn, and they can literally shoot you through walls and objects. I think some of the objects they're not supposed to be able to shoot you through, and it's a glitch, but they do anyways. Some of the walls they are able to shoot you through because the game has semi-destructible environments now. But yeah, this boss is so annoying. The good thing is that since the map is based in a multiplayer map, there are a lot of head glitch spots and places where you can mantle and mount onto to make it easier to kill. But yeah, this boss is just so annoying, and just so many of them spawn in. If I wanted to get shot by people, I would play campaign or multiplayer. Zombies, I don't want to get shot. It's just frustrating. Every time they've done something in the past, like the Goliath in Exo Zombies, it was annoying. I guess there are other zombies that shoot at you, like the Mangler has the cannon, and also the Panzer Soldat, but I don't think they are as annoying because it's not a proper gun, and the gun literally has flinch as well, so you will flinch when you're getting shot. And yeah, I just find these to be so annoying. Just get rid of them. I just don't want to see this in the game. Why is this in the game? I don't think anyone advocates for this. I don't think anyone wants this zombie type in the game. The explosive zombies seem to do a lot more damage than they did in Cold War Zombies 2, but yeah, they're not really too big of a deal. I just really don't like these guys with a gun, just because, as I was saying, you get way too much flinch. There's way too many of them that spawn in. There's not an easy way to counter it. You should be able to just shoot off his weapon like you can with the Russian Manglers. You can shoot off its cannon. Yeah, I just don't know. I feel like this mode might have not even been made by Treyarch as much as they are claiming. I don't know. It just feels like Sledgehammer Games might have had a bit more involvement with this as they let on, and Treyarch are just being used as the marketing tool, because a lot of things do feel a bit similar to World War II Zombies, so I don't know. Overall, Zombies is just not getting enough love, and I really do wish that Activision would focus more on Zombies, but their main focus is Warzone and multiplayer, and Zombies keeps getting shafted. I understand that Zombies is seen as the third mode and not as special as the two pillars, but I really do think that Zombies has a lot of potential. I think it can be something way bigger than it is currently, especially if they focus in on this open world Zombies style that they first explored with Outbreak. I think that Zombies has a really big potential future, but yeah, the problem is in Black Ops 4 Zombies, due to the hate that it received, Chaos ended up getting cancelled. I guess Treyarch just realized people only care about the Aether storyline, so they continued with the Dark Aether storyline, which is a direct sequel to the Aether storyline, which is basically like a reboot, a soft reboot, where everything got refreshed to a linear timeline that's easier to follow. And whilst I would have loved to see what happened after Ancient Evil, I think this was ultimately a good decision for Treyarch to make, to just cut their losses, because people weren't that interested in the Chaos story, unfortunately. But because of these issues with Black Ops 4 Zombies, I guess Activision just don't see it as being as profitable right now, but the thing is, Cold War Zombies really carried that game. A lot of people only played Black Ops Cold War for the zombies. A lot of people really didn't like that game's multiplayer. So I'm not exactly sure. I do wish that Vanguard Zombies got more attention, but at the end of the day, I'm just seeing this as a bit of a filler year whilst we wait for Treyarch's next title, which is probably going to be a lot more expansive. And hopefully we'll go to crazier locations, because they've been alluding to Atlantis a lot, so I don't know if they're just trolling or if we're eventually going to finally see an Atlantis map. Dr. Peck is going to the Pacific after all. Maybe we could see an underwater map where the inversion warheads crashed. But yeah, I just feel so bad for Treyarch because so many people are giving them hate online right now and blaming them for everything when it's not really their fault. The only one at fault is Activision for pushing their deadlines, really, because at the end of the day, if they had a lot more time to work on the mode to perfection, imagine how much better it could be. But Call of Duty is the most successful video game franchise. They pump out a game every single year, and they're always the best-selling games. So in Activision's minds, why would they change their product format if it's been working so well for so long? But Treyarch and all of the other developers, or any developers for that matter, aren't lazy. There's no such thing as a lazy developer. Yes, sometimes they cut corners and stuff like that, but that isn't out of laziness. That is because they have intense deadlines and intense crunch. Developers almost always work non-stop because they are trying to create the best product possible for the community. If they are cutting corners, it's simply because they have a deadline to meet. It doesn't mean they are working any less. Often it's the publisher that's at fault for these intense crunch schedules. And it's just the nature of the business, unfortunately. It's not even just gaming, it's just capitalism as a whole. And there does need to be a lot more regulations put in place because people do get overworked a lot, and at the end of the day, the people at Treyarch are real people, and I think people don't realize that. They don't see it from their perspective. They don't see it from the amount of work, the amount of sleepless nights, the amount of hours that they are grinding in every day. They don't see Treyarch as individual people making up the studio. They just see it as an entity, and I think that's a problem, and there's a bit of disconnect there where people don't really understand life as a developer, and neither do I, but I'm just interpreting based off of what I know, and even just based off of being a YouTuber, being somewhat in the public eye, which is somewhat similar to being in the public eye as a developer, where you are also constantly receiving criticism and stuff like that. There is some crossover there, although it's not exactly the same. After all, they have been working from home due to COVID. I'm not exactly sure if they are still working at home. I think they are, and that's definitely hindered their ability to develop as well and go on location and stuff like that, because in the past, Treyarch would visit locations such as Alcatraz for Mob of the Dead, or the Hohenwerfen Castle in Austria for Der Eisendrache, whereas now they are limited to travel. Just to summarize this video really quickly, I don't think that Der Anfang is bad. I don't think that the mode is bad either. I just think it's not really ready. I think that it needs more work, it needs better balancing, and it just has released in a poor state, unfortunately. I think that the mode is a good proof of concept. I think that the mode could be fun, and I'm not like one of those people that just wants to see round-based maps. I loved Outbreak, so I'm open to Treyarch trying new modes. I'm not one of those people that just wants to see round-based maps. I do really think that we need to see round-based versions of the Der Anfang maps though. Stalingrad, Shi No Numa, Hotel Royale, and also Normandy. They can just put some barriers up, put the perks on the map, etc., and just have you play it as a normal round-based map. This needs to happen. This isn't a question of if, it needs to happen. It's the only way people are going to get back into this game if there is some sort of round-based content, because Treyarch have already basically said there is no round-based maps coming to this game. They've said that there's new modes coming, and they did say that there's future content coming that will please round-based fans. So there's probably some sort of new mode that's similar to round-based, but it's not round-based exactly. But the thing is, I can't really trust their word here, because they did say that high rounds on Der Anfang will play similar to round-based maps, and now that we've actually got to play the game, that's just not true at all. So yeah, I don't know what future content is coming, but if they don't have any round-based maps planned, they need to change their choices, and they need to release round-based maps. It's fair enough if there's not going to be a main round-based experience, but just make round-based versions of these objective-based modes. Just do it. That way, it gives players the choice of which mode they want to play, because I know a lot of people just don't want to do these forced objectives. I was okay with it in Outbreak because the objectives weren't really what I liked about the mode. I liked the open world aspect of it, but in this mode, the forced objectives are just too much. They get really repetitive. Once you get to round 15, there's not really any reason to keep on going. It's just the same thing over and over again, which I guess you can argue is similar for round-based too, but I think round-based just gives you more options on the way that you want to play. You can play in a lot of different ways, whereas this mode just doesn't really give you any options on the way you want to play. You just do the same objectives. There's no real choice there, and it's the complete opposite to Outbreak. Outbreak gave you infinite choice. choice. It's essentially a sandbox mode. Don't get me wrong, Outbreak has its issues. It's not a perfect mode by any means. It needs a lot more work. I think especially with the pacing, and the maps do feel very empty. But this is their first attempt, and I think it can get a lot better in the future. And I think that Outbreak is a very good first start, and I can't wait to see what Treyarch do for Outbreak in the future. But Anfang is just not it. I think it's taken away everything that made Outbreak great. Another issue with Anfang is that even though it has Shi No Numa and also Hotel Royale, you can only play on a small section from them. You can't play on the full Shi No Numa. If you look outside the map, you can see the outside isn't even fully modeled in, so they've only actually made the hut, and that's the only spot you can play on. So yeah, if they do decide to release survival versions of these maps, they're going to have to actually finish them off, because I don't think they're even finished yet. And I don't see what was even the point of bringing back Shi No Numa if they're only going to allow us to play on a tiny bit of it during an objective where you don't even stay there that long. I just don't understand what was even the reason for doing this. If you're going to remake it, just bring back the full thing, you know? And just a little thing, this is just a little tidbit. For some weird reason, the crystals, the red Dark Aether crystals, as well as the loot crates are very small, and they kind of blend in with the environment on Anfang. This is just really small and kind of a nitpick, but it's just something I noticed. I know a lot of people won't even realize you can break the crystals when they first see them, because they're not as big and prevalent as they are in Cold War Zombies. So they need to change that. They need to make the loot crate a bit larger and stand out a bit more, as well as the crystals. They're just a bit small. But yeah, that doesn't really change the gameplay at all, so that's just a bit of a nitpick, but just something small that needs to be changed. So going into the future for Vanguard Zombies, I'm unsure what the hell's happening, because we're getting a quest sometime early next year. I don't know what the future DLC maps are going to be, but they're going to be new modes. So yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see how that is. New covenants, new objectives, and new maps will be added. I don't think it's going to be enough though. Even if new quests and stuff are added, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think it's going to be too little, too late. I think this game's doomed already. But I just think that people telling people to not pre-order the game is counterintuitive, because it will just cause Activision to cut budgets, and it's just going to hurt the game more. It just will. We've seen that happen with BO4. BO4 had 4 Zombies maps on launch, and I think the reason for that was because Zombies Chronicles was so successful. So Activision saw Zombies as being a huge profitable success, but then BO4 was the complete opposite of that, where it wasn't anywhere near as successful. So then in Cold War, budgets got cut, and that's why I think it's a lot more simplified. Now, personally, I really like Cold War Zombies' gameplay, like I said earlier. I think it's the most fun out of any other game, but it's very evident that there were issues with it, and that's why the maps were, you know, reusing areas from the campaign and multiplayer maps, which I don't mind, but it just makes sense that there were funding issues because of probably BO4. And now this game is doing even worse with even less funding, which has me worried. Just a quick mention that you can get 65% off Babble using the link in this video's description, which is the #1 selling language learning app. It's flexible, engaging, and an enjoyable way to explore a new language and expand your brain. Built by a team of 150 plus language experts. So yeah, check out the link and get that huge discount. If you check out the link in this video's description, you can go ahead and get yourself some blue light protection glasses from felixgray.com. They help relieve symptoms of digital eye strain and support your well-being, since obviously we are the first generation that constantly looks at screens, so you need to protect your eyesight. I want to remind everyone about the awesome giveaway sponsored by Mobile Premier League, where 5 viewers of this channel can win 5 copies of Vanguard. Make sure to download MPL today on the App Store for iOS and MPL.us from your Android device, and make an account to enter the free giveaway linked in this video's description. Anyways, that's everything I wanted to go over in today's video. Thank you for watching the video, and make sure to subscribe if you're not here for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.